But with that balance of if taxes are in essence always going to go up, maybe do I need to start thinking about a strategy of a slower exit out of this?
What's been the biggest frustration that you've seen, either for yourself or the people that you serve, who've made millions in cryptocurrency and are looking for ways to defer the capital gains tax?
Exit strategy is a big thing right now. There's a buyer and seller for every market. I know a lot of clients, and myself included, that were earlier adopters into crypto, maybe getting it in the $500 to $1,000 range for Bitcoin. I have no interest, and most folks have zero interest at this point to let go of their Bitcoin. They're long-term holders of this. But with that balance of if taxes are in essence always going to go up, maybe do I need to start thinking about a strategy of a slower exit out of this, so I don't get hit with one giant tax bill at one point in time?
Yeah, so to that case point, we just did a deal for a client, Chris, and she bought Bitcoin. She worked for Google for many years, and she bought Bitcoin for about $30,000 to $50,000 at a very low price. And so that was her all-in cost. The value of that Bitcoin went to $50 million when Bitcoin was at $54,000 a coin. And I asked her, I said, well, why didn't you sell prior to? I'm like, how did you have the titanium spine to hold in when all of the ups and the downs, and like, why didn't you sell at 1 million or 5 million or 10 million, or, and now it's at 50. She says, you know what, Brett? I believe in the long-term, practical use and utility of Bitcoin. Number two, I didn't have a great place to invest it as an alternative. This is something, by the way, she didn't do any alternatives. By alternatives, I mean altcoins inside of cryptocurrency. She did say Bitcoin. She goes, but number three, I had a huge tax. I'm in California. I'm working for Google. Like, I'm making a lot of money, and I got, a lot of tax. And so we did an assessment, and, and she said, I want to start with 5 million. When Bitcoin hits 54,000 a coin, I want to start with 5 million. And with our company, using what's called the Deferred Sales Trust, because it often gets asked, can I defer capital gains taxes on the sale of Bitcoin? And the answer is yes, with the Deferred Sales Trust. And so she exited this 5 million out of the 50 million and deferred all the tax. The tax is going to be about $1.85 million, state, federal, Obamacare tax, and she lives in California, so it's one of the higher ones. And so that was transformational for her because she was able to kind of retire or move on to another business venture. The funds can be invested into a tech startup company, all tax deferred. So it's the seed capital. And so I'm just curious, had you heard of that before, or what are your thoughts on what that could mean for crypto millionaires?
I have heard of versions of it, and I know that you can do it with other things also. For example, shares of a company that you might have been bestowed upon as you're employed or own a company. I think that that's part of what's great about tax strategy is that you do have to put your homework in. You've got to find a professional or somebody that can really help you out with it. But there are ways to lessen the blow if you do your homework appropriately. And for folks, one of the other things I'm seeing is more and more of those alternative investments like real estate, private equity, et cetera, are offering the ability to come straight in with and out when you cash out. So now you can actually eliminate that step of liquidation if you can use it in that fashion. So there's a lot happening. I think crypto is going to press the boundaries and thresholds of what we can do. And I'm excited about it as it continues to grow. One of the things I love most about this particular company and project over the years as an entrepreneur is we really have changed a lot of people's lives. We've got stories like that client that, started with $40,000 of her 403B and now is getting to retire 20 years earlier because she made the decision into crypto. But you have to be smart about how you manage that on the way out as well, right?
Absolutely. We call that optimal timing. We call that, part of your tax flow versus cash flow strategy has to do with timing. To continue that story a little bit more, Bitcoin from 54,000 went to 60, and then it went to 65, and then it went to almost 69,000. And then it's, hit all the way down to 25, maybe even lower here. Now I think it's floating around 30,000 as we record in May of 2022. And so, I remember calling her like at 60 and then at 65 and saying, hey, just kind of nudging you, you can exit this thing tax deferred, diversify your wealth into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate.
What did she do though?
So she didn't do it. This is my point. She didn't do it. And part of it was
just true believers in what crypto is going to do. I personally think that it's going to do what to monetary systems in our economy that something similar like what internet did to communications or email did to the post office. It's got disruptive potential. It's not going anywhere. And there's a lot of concern. Inflation is not transitory. It is, and it's starting to have its impact. People are starting to actually notice it at higher levels. And it squeezes the middle class at the same time when a recession could be squeezing middle class jobs with what's happening in these tech stocks. So folks are saying, hey, I believed in this thing 4 or 5 years ago when the economy was doing pretty good. Should I hold that pattern of thought as we transition into this next evolution of our economy?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, but my point of all this was she could sell high and buy low because and at the time, all this craziness was just rapidly appreciating. Ethereum as well. And I had another client who he worked for a tech company, Silicon Valley. He bought Ethereum and Bitcoin, and his about $100,000 investment went to $13.5 million. And he ended up exiting $7.5 million in 2 different occasions as Ethereum hit some new highs. And the point was, now things have dropped, and this is the coolest thing: you can sell high and buy low.
Yes.
Right. So all tax deferred. You can re-put your positions in and write it back up. And so that's the idea. Like, and I think this is one of the biggest concepts here. Like real estate, there's a time to sell and a time to buy. Cryptocurrency, there's a time to sell, there's a time to buy. But if you can do it in a way that keeps you tax deferred, you don't have to suffer the tax consequences when you exit. This frees up I call them crypto geniuses, crypto millionaires who know when it's a good time to sell and a good time to buy. Not saying you exit all 100% all at one time. Yeah. But if you can dollar cost average out tax deferred and then dollar cost average back in and write it back up, to me, that changes the game. Like, any thoughts on that?
Yes, you get to keep your principal, your purchasing power, without having to take a shave off 15 to 25% of it every time. In fact, back in 2017, I spoke in Puerto Rico at an event, and the mayor of San Juan was there, as they were, they're very tax friendly. And my speech was the $15 million mistake. Now, this was many years ago. And 2 guys, Bob and Steve, put $5,500 into crypto. One went to an exchange like Coinbase, and the other went to Roth IRA. And then I gave them omnipotent, or perfect hindsight. And they took every perfect trade of averaging in, averaging out, 4 of them. And both were very happy, right? They turned $5,500 into tens of millions. But there was a $15 million difference of value for the guy that went in the Roth IRA. Because every time he sold off, he didn't have to ante up to Uncle Sam and then thereby have less cash to work with for the next purchase in.
Exactly. And by the way, if you're wondering what that amount is, it's somewhere between 25 and 50% of your gain, depending on short versus long term, depending on depreciation recapture. Now, in cryptocurrency, there's no depreciation there. So it's probably more likely, let's say 25, unless you're in the Puerto Rico, right, or the Virgin Islands, which is a little different, but 25 to call it 37, with California, state, federal, Obamacare, kind of that range. I appreciate the insight there. I'd love to see that copy of that presentation, because that's
I'll go try to dust and I'd like to update it too. Bring it to the selling at the all-time highs, buying in dips that we've had over the last couple of years since.
Yep.
I'm sure it's probably $100 million difference by now.
Yeah, exactly. And then the taxes are only going higher. And if Biden's proposals go through, which it looks like it's going to be tempered a little bit, although the federal rate I heard is still likely to maybe go from 20 to 25 or 25 to 26 or 28. We'll see there.